morning from a very wet, overcast, very mild Plymouth. Welcome to another vlog. This one is focusing on composting for first timers. What I learned last year from starting this plant from weeds, which you'll see now. One thing I learned from last year, which is not compost, but it is important, and that is get weed membrane down as quick as possible. Carpet, cardboard, whichever your poison, get it down, get the weeds stifled before you even start doing anything, because it just helps enormously. The other weeds that are on the paths and all that, use that as fuel for this stuff, compost. There's various ways of making compost. I'll try and cover them all off. I won't try and make it too long, because there's an awful lot of information, and I might have to refer you back to individual videos so that you can see things in a more detailed way. Right at the start, I came from the basis that I wouldn't have any equipment, so I did in-bed composting to show you how you can get started without any bins being made, because the fertility is the most important part if you want to get crops in that first year. Starting in March, you're a little bit behind on the curve, but as you'll see, I did it, and you can do it by following simple, similar sort of steps. In-bed composting is the perfect way. But if you haven't got a compost bins to start off with, it's probably your best opportunity. And the only thing to remember is that in-bed composting will provide weed-free compost. If you want to use manure, not a problem. That'll work just fine. But it all depends on availability. In our area, it's very hard to get hold of manures. So it's got to be plant-based fertility or nothing, or chemicals. I don't want chemicals. Right, so it all starts with compost, and to make compost you need equal balance of browns and greens, and whether it's in an open compost like I'm going to show you now in ground, or contained in a Dalek, it's basically the same. Here I'm using layers of green, as in grass clippings, newspaper, hay, and very small wood chips, very small. Zooming ahead for a couple of days, this is the second turn, and it's as simple as just rolling it down the bed and bringing air into the pile. These won't get enormously hot, these piles, because there's nothing to keep the heat in, but it definitely works, as you'll see later on from basically just this process. This was roughly the same time as last year as it is now, and it's worked very well. And by rolling it down the bed, you'll see that it's actually killing off the weeds in the bed. This is zooming ahead another 10 days or so, and obviously there's vast improvements in the same bed. I've took it up to the top of the bed and now rolling it back down again. This is basically the final turn, and you can see it's already pretty much like compost. You know, it's looking pretty good. The appearance of the plot looks much better, of course, because I've put down membrane and wood chips over the path, so it's eliminated a lot of the weeds that you can visually see. The plastic and carpet mulches to the left and right are working wonders for subduing the weeds to come, saving me a lot of work. And you, if you decide to copy this, and once again, this isn't rocket science, it's just turning the compost, getting air into it, and by being directly on the soil, you're getting the microbes down into that soil. This is that same bed in that same compost spread on directly onto the soil. Then I used cardboard over the top of this compost, bearing in mind it's not going to be weed free compost. This is the only compost that I've brought in now, this layer that you're seeing here. So there is a minor cost, and probably you'll have to do the same because it's hard to get that finished compost to plant into it, and I really wanted to plant directly into this. The nice thing about cardboard and compost, it looks so visually attractive. It does look a lovely instant impact finish. Now we're going across to the next bed over, which I had done with the same process with a new batch of compost, not quite as old as the previous bed. This was affected by weeds a bit more, so I wanted to have a different approach. So this time I made piles of compost and put membrane over the top of it and planted through the membrane to get to the compost. Obviously this worked very, very well. I was really pleased with the performance of this bed. As you can see, this is me cropping the squashes at the end of the year. There's the membrane that we planted through, visually weed free, and that's the compost underneath the membrane when it was finished. That's great. I removed the sides of the wooden surround because there was a lot of slugs and snails underneath there, all around the wood, and yeah, all of that lot came from just around the sides, and obviously were becoming a bit of a pain for other crops, not the squash. But yeah, then of course all the foliage was used in the compost again, so it's a matter of recycling various constituent parts. This was the wood compost that you'll see later on. Right, we're back to May again. Now this is now employing dialects straight onto the beds. By composting onto the beds, you actually are importing goodness downwards, so you're helping killing off weeds, any microbes, any drain off goes down to the soil. Absolutely perfect. This is the first turn of a grass dominated pile. As you can see, it's lovely and hot, and it's doing its wondrous job. You can see after the second turn it's looking pretty good. Now I just want to quickly show you how to turn a compost pile in a Dalek. This is, I know I've shown this before, but people may be watching it for the first time. So what I do is, rather than turn it all out in back in again, I take out a slice, about say a quarter or a third of the total amount. Just take that out, and it's just a matter of introducing air and turning the rest of it inside the Dalek. I won't dwell on this too long, but basically take out a slice and then replace the Dalek back on the top like this. Remove the lid, of course, and it's just a matter of moving it around inside the bin and then replacing the stuff that I've taken out back on the top or into a gap, whichever is easiest. And then this is fast forwarding again to September, and this is the theme of this one is using whatever materials you have to hand. Now this was a wood shavings mulch I had to subdue the potatoes on the next bed over, and I made compost out of that. And then going forward a bit more again in December, I'm making up a new batch of compost with slower materials, using everything I possibly can. Always looking ahead to for the next year. A lot of what I do, including the wood chip compost, was always about this year, not last year. Producing a steady supply of compost. So this year I am truly compost self-sufficient. And I won't be applying any fertility onto here apart from the compost, all generated from plants. Right, and so thank you very much for joining me again. This is just basically showing you how to make compost in 1 year and the various steps you ought to make. And it is quite possible. See you on next vlog. It's all about seed sowing.